Pleased to welcome you to our 21st annual Adult Literacy Leadership Institute hosted by the Florida Literacy Coalition. Appreciate your joining us for these next 2 days. I think we have quite a bit of good information, some great sessions that we'll be sharing with you, and we'll review the agenda. Everybody should have received the agenda yesterday, but we'll do a quick review of the agenda just in a few minutes. But we'd like to first start by just going around and asking everybody to quickly introduce themselves or briefly introduce themselves. So why don't we go ahead and I'll actually start with my colleague here, Stephanie at FLC. Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm the new Education and Training Coordinator, and I'm so excited to be here and share some of the professional development trainings with you all.
Great. Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane Oropesa, and I'm with Reed Lakeland in Lakeland, Florida. I'm the program coordinator, and I've been with Reed Lakeland for about 10 years, maybe a couple more years.
Great. Welcome. Arlene.
Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone.
Are you on mute? Or you might be on mute. Oh, there it is. Can you hear us, Arlene?
Yes, I can.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning. Yeah, so my name is Arlene Silberg. I'm the education supervisor for adult education at the Florida Department of Corrections in Okeechobee.
Okay, great.
That's
Dawn.
right.
Dawn, you're muted if you're talking.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name's Dawn Randolph, and I'm the program manager at Suncoast Technical College in Sarasota, Florida.
Okay, great. John.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is John Reyes. I am the Chief Program Officer at El Sol Jupiter Neighborhood Resource Center.
Great. And Krista.
Good morning. My name's Krista Chipman. I work for Santa Fe College. I am the coordinator for our student mentor team in our Project Saint program.
Okay, great. LaShawn.
Greetings. I'm LaShawn Crumpler. I'm the president of the Family Support Services Network.
Maya.
Hello, good morning. My name is Maya Lane, and I'm the president and founder of Nicer Florida. This is a nonprofit, community-based. We work with refugees and new immigrants in Sarasota, Tampa, and Pinellas County. Thank you for inviting me to this meeting.
Sure, thank you for coming. Michelle.
Hi there, my name is Michelle DeVoe McLean. I'm the Executive Director of the Manatee Literacy Council in Bradenton, Florida.
Thank you. Vanessa.
Good morning, my name is Vanessa Neblett. I am the Adult Services Department Head for the Orange County Library System in Orlando.
Vonda. I think you may be on mute, Vonda. There you go. Vonda?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you now.
Okay, let me start my video. I'm sorry, my building don't open until 9 o'clock, so it takes me a few minutes to get on. I apologize.
Can you introduce yourself, Vonda?
Oh, good morning. My name is Vonda Bryant. I'm with Broward County Library. I am responsible for the library's learning services, which is literacy. So we have an adult literacy program where we use volunteers to teach adults to read and write. We have English classes at 22 of our 37 locations. We have citizenship classes at 8 locations. I run the Korea Online High School, and we have 6 locations that offer homework help. So that's just a small portion of what I do.
Okay.
Good morning to everyone.
Daniel? You there, Daniel? Okay, we'll move on. Yeah, I'm not sure who I've missed here because we've had a few folks. My screen's shifting around here. Arlene, I think. Arlene? Okay, you're on mute there, Arlene.
Hi, I did introduce myself, but I
Oh.
don't mind introducing myself again.
I'm sorry. I
I work-
apologize. My
That's
bad.
okay. I
Okay.
work with the Florida Department of Corrections for
Okay.
Adult Education,
Yes.
and I'm in Okeechobee. I'm the education supervisor here.
Okay. My apologies.
That's
I'm
okay. Thank you.
getting kind of mixed up here because my screen's moving around. Who did we miss? Did we miss anybody? Please just introduce yourself if we did.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Strange. I'm the Library Special Services Coordinator for Literacy at the Leroy Collins Leon County Public Library, which is in Tallahassee.
Okay.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Hi, sorry. My name is Brooke Sammons. I'm the Executive Director of the Treehouse Foundation, and this is Miss Brooke Brown. She works with us as well. We had a little computer glitch this morning, so I apologize for our tardiness.
No problem. Welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so let's Stephanie, if you can just pull up the agenda. Just going to do a little quick review of our agenda for today. Everybody should have received this already, but just do a little recap. Okay. So first up, we're in for a treat. We have Marcus, Veronica, and Gina. We'll be introducing them. We're having them introduce themselves here in a minute on our first session, which will launch our 2-day institute on building workplace and community partnerships. And then after that, we'll be taking a 15-minute break, and we'll be going into our next session with Sarah from All In and the Barbara Bush Foundation on advancing adult literacy, mobilizing business and policy influencers. And that's going to be looking at some research that they've commissioned there at All In. We'll then have a half-hour break for lunch and then come back in the afternoon. We'll be giving a little bit of an update on some things that we have coming up here at FLC, and then we'll be opening it up for discussion on any topics of interest to you all or questions you may have for other folks in the state. That's going to be sort of an informal conversation that will run till no later than 12:45. We may wrap that up earlier, depending on how that goes.
Rick, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. You missed all of that, huh? I apologize. Somebody put me on mute. Okay. Okay, let me start over again. So when did I go? When was I put on mute? Did I review the agenda yet, or did you hear me? Did you?
Around 12:45.
Okay, 12:45. Okay,
Yeah.
so you heard most of that. Okay, so if you can scroll down, oh, here we are on Tuesday. So excuse me. Yeah, Tuesday, no, Wednesday. Can you go to Wednesday? There we go. Tomorrow morning, we'll be starting at 9 a.m. with a session by presented by Jen Hauser with a company called Liquid Creative on using analytics to improve your program outreach. Then we'll have a resource spotlight session that will highlight resources provided through ProLiteracy, our national organization, as well as Florida's vocational rehabilitation services for folks with disabilities. And then we will have a session where we're taking some of the topics that those of you who responded to our survey identified as issues of interest and having some small, sort of focused small group discussion around those. And then we'll be wrapping up around 12:20. So does anybody have any questions? Okay. I noted we had a couple more people just join us. Mary Quijano, can you introduce yourself? You're on mute, Mary.
Good morning.
Can,
I had some trouble getting in. My name is Mary Quijano, and I teach online ESOL for the Literacy Council of Upper Pinellas.
okay. Thanks for joining us. And anybody else that just joined us?
I'd like to say that I was here the whole time, but I just joined you.
Okay.
Joe Sinney from Learn to Read in St. Johns County.
Okay. Okay, very good. So our first session, as I just referenced, is building workplace and community partnerships. This is a panel discussion that will focus on, I think, an issue that's probably of common interest to most of us. How do you engage partners in the community to expand or otherwise offer services, whether it be businesses or other kinds of agencies and organizations, to expand our reach and to work with adults, provide instruction to adults in partnership with other agencies. So we're very fortunate to have 3 outstanding organizations that have done some really good work in that area. Marcus Hale, who's the president and CEO of the Literacy Alliance of Northeast Florida. Veronica Pavone Baker, who's the director of adult programs with Literacy Volunteers of Collier County. And then Gina Solomon, executive director of the Adult Literacy League. So with that, we're going to turn it over to you, Marcus.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
All right, fantastic. Nobody panic. I'm going to try and share my screen here. This should go smoothly. How's that look for everybody?
Looks great.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks for having me, Greg. I really appreciate it. And thanks for hosting and facilitating this workshop. I'm very happy to get to share some of what we've done here at the Literacy Alliance and answer any questions that people might have. But again, my name is Marcus Hale. I'm the president and CEO of the Literacy Alliance of Northeast Florida. I've been here for about 5 years. And before that had about 20, 30 years in nonprofits in general. So it's been a real treat to be in the adult literacy and adult education space. I feel very fortunate to be able to have gotten into this role and be able to be among folks like you. So I will share a little bit about our journey over the last 5 years, because it's been one that's had a lot of growth with it. And a lot of that growth has been due to partnerships, and particularly community partnerships for us. So I know Greg mentioned both business and community partnerships, and ours has largely been driven by community ones. So I will start with talking a little bit about what partnerships are. And this was information that I'd gotten off of some ProLiteracy discussions about partnerships. And you all can probably imagine that this is pretty close to home for each of you, whether you're doing partnerships or looking into it. But I think they resonated for us particularly with the creating access piece of it, but also combining resources, saving resources, and also sharing knowledge. I think those are all really critical pieces, particularly for nonprofits and community-based organizations, but certainly apply for libraries and and other state institutions as well. Okay, we'll keep going. I've got a couple of slides here that I'll go through really quickly because I know we're on a time frame that I don't want to hold up, but I wanted to make sure to mention some of the national spotlight that's been put on partnerships. There's particularly a recent publication from ProLiteracy that's part of their quarterly, I think, research journal. And the March one that just came out actually had a really great piece on it about partnerships. They were really high level, not that these aren't high level partnerships that we're talking about, but they were really big partnership discussions and networks. And they highlighted that the genesis for a lot of them were these principles of this funding shift that was happening at a national level, a recognition that new approaches were needed, and the idea that collaboration among social service providers was really what created a community-based approach. So I really appreciated that article. I encourage you, if you haven't seen it, to go back and look at it or check it out. A few things that it noted were these these cities that had partnership expansions. I won't go into a whole lot of detail on them. They're highlighted in that write-up. But Portland, Houston, and Philadelphia in particular were highlighted for some really great examples of really, really big kind of citywide, statewide partnerships that really expanded adult education and adult literacy reach. But I'll go ahead and start talking about what's worked for us locally and the experience that we've had and the growth that we've had over particularly the past 5 years. So since 2019, we've had really exponential growth. We've gone from roughly 300 adult learners to a little over 900 that we started off with at the beginning of the year. And that was largely driven by partnerships, and in particular, a network that we built among other social service providers and other community-based organizations that started providing a lot of referrals for us. We had a dynamic here in town where there were a lot of organizations that were looking to refer adult learners to services that they just couldn't find, particularly for the higher level, I say higher level, the GED, high school completion, intermediate learners experience. They knew where to go if there were the basic literacy aspects of things, so the learning to read, so to speak, and the basic literacy. But in our community, at least, there was a real need for flexible, accessible, customized high school completion GED work, in addition to the ongoing work around basic literacy, because as you all probably have experienced, the reality of adult education is that a lot of people have a goal of getting a GED, but they may not necessarily be at the level that they need to enroll in traditional GED classes, in which in that scenario, then they're often being turned away or poorly served by other GED providers. At the same time, ones that they might find are also fairly structured. So there's very set schedules, there's start times and end times, both during the day and during the year. And that can be really problematic for a lot of adult learners who need some flexibility because of life and work challenges. So as we started getting out and talking to nonprofits about the opportunities that adult learners can have here at the Literacy Alliance, that really opened up a lot of doors for them, for their clients, and then also opened up a lot of doors for us. There was also a recognition in the community that we were an organization that had quite a lot of expertise. What we ran into a lot of times with other nonprofits were that they would have this thought of, oh, we should provide GED classes. This seems like a need in our community. And then as they got into it, they realized it's a lot harder than you think. Not only is the GED itself, fairly complicated and tough. You've got the 4 tests and they're in different subjects, but even just managing it and looking into assessments and knowing how to coordinate it, finding the right instructors, all of that can be really complicated. So we had a few organizations that had tried to do that and then recognized they were in way over their heads. And when they had learned about us, they were able to kind of turnkey that over to the Literacy Alliance and go from there. It also allowed us to open up locations. So we really prioritized neighborhood access. So the partners that we had community operations. So they had community sites, they had facilities that were deep into the neighborhoods, and we could, basically partner with them to not only have them refer students to us, but also be able to serve the students in those neighborhoods as close to them as possible, so that it makes it really convenient and helps them attend the classes and stay persistent in their education. So I'll go into a few examples of the partnerships that we've had over those years and what made them particularly special. The first one was with the Housing Authority, and for any of you that were at the Literacy Coalition's conference last month, they were highlighted as the Partner of the Year. But this was an example of a group that obviously it's the Housing Authority, so they have facilities throughout the community. We were able to do it in their community centers that were right in the heart of a lot of the residential communities. They also helped out with some of the recruitment efforts. They hosted a graduation ceremony for the students, and we regularly participated in their outreach events to also try and get more referrals. And it really turned out to be good. We're actually at 3 sites now here in the community, and we're looking at adding about 2 or 3 more. So that's been a really strong partnership. And then the other one is the Women's Center of Jacksonville. This was really a neat one. They had a GED program, and this is a good example of an organization recognizing this really wasn't their strengths. Their strengths were in counseling. And so they had a GED program that was floundering a bit, and they really wanted to focus in on their strengths. And so they worked with us to basically transition their students and even their tutors. They had a lot of volunteer tutors that they transferred over to us. So they were making referrals. Women would call there asking about continuing their education, and they would refer them over to us. The neat thing about this partnership is it was reciprocal in some of the services. Not that any of our students couldn't go get these services from the Women's Center on their own, but they made specific efforts to be here, literally here in this building, on site to be available to our students if any of our students need their services in terms of counseling. And they even opened it up to men. They weren't going to turn away anybody. So they were starting to work on getting office hours here that we would be able to tell all of our students that, you know, if this is something you feel like you're wanting or in need of or would like some more information about, there are people here from the Women's Center that are able to help you. So that was a really, great partnership. And then the last one was with the YMCA and North Florida Sales. These were both English learner partnerships. The first one obviously is a community-based organization with the YMCA. They developed the new American Welcome Center, or at least they brought the new American Welcome Center here. That's the national program. And then we started partnering with them to provide their ESL instruction on site. And then North Florida Sales is actually our first business partnership, which I think you'll hear more about from Gina and some of the others. But this was a company here in town that has a pretty large immigrant refugee population that they really wanted to be able to provide on-site English classes to, and they were really struggling to find anybody who would do it on site. They found other people to do it, but you had to go there to the other facility. So they really wanted something on site, and we were able to provide that for them. So some other partnerships that we've got that kind of fit in similar templates as those others. We've got Operation New Hope, which is an offender reentry program, Sulzbacher Center, which is a homelessness center, as well as a housing establishment. Goodwill, which does a lot of job skills. We've got 2 or 3 of these like Goodwill, where they have a jobs program that requires a GED or a certain level of literacy instruction. And they will refer students over to us to build up their skills or get their GED, and then we'll be able to refer them back to the organization once they've completed our program. Hubbard House and Rethreaded are both in the domestic violence and human trafficking space. Ability Housing is very similar to the work that we're doing at Sulzbacher Center. The Sheriff's Office, we do all of the adult education for the local jail, not part of the State Department of Corrections, but the local municipal system. And then Northside Community Involvement is a good example of just a community organization that's connected with a church that has really deep roots in that Northside community, and they've been hosting our space. And then Beyond 90 is a really great new program here in town that's focused on ESL that they like to share their story that they were Beyond 90, and now they're also doing a First 90 program, which basically is the first 90 days of immigrants or refugees being here, and then also the Beyond 90 piece of it. So I think takeaways for us were the strength that this brought to us, and encouragement for anybody else wanting to do this is to really know your value add in these partnerships. As I mentioned, we really were recognized as the experts in the field. We were also able to provide a really turnkey solution where people could come to us and we would take care of their adult education services. And I think probably like all of you, we provide a very welcoming, non-institutional, encouraging, positive environment that recognizes that there's a lot of barriers for adult learners to continue their education. And we try everything we can to make sure that they're welcomed and continue, and then also provide as much convenient access and flexibility as we can in the schedule. challenges that we faced included recognizing that value add and creating access, but also recognizing that as we got deep into the community, it spreads us out, and it's really great for access. It makes it wonderful for adult learners to be able to continue their education, but not necessarily the most efficient. So we've really had to talk to funders about that in terms of the escalating cost that we've had in doing that. We've had to hire a lot of part-time teachers because we needed multiple people in multiple places at one time. And that can take up a lot of time and resources. And as many of you know, volunteers take up a lot of time as well. And then also, again, making sure that our funders understand these challenges. And then if you're doing this turnkey approach, really making sure that you understand that if you're offering this benefit as a value add to a partner or a business, that you're on the hook for that. So our pitch to companies and partners was that you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about the staffing. You don't have to worry about, and that means you've got to worry about it. So that can sometimes be a challenge, but it was one that we were really glad to be able to do. And I hope that was helpful for everybody. I am always more than happy to share any more insights and certainly make available any other answers to questions you might have based on what we've experienced. So thank you all, and I'll turn it back over to Greg.
Okay, well, thank you. That was very informative, Marcus. I have a few questions, but I'm going to hold on to them to the end. And I asked that if folks do have questions they want to add to the chat, feel free to do so. We also have some time allotted at the end, so that if you prefer to, ask your questions verbally, you can just unmute yourself at that time. So, thank you, Marcus. Next up, we have Veronica. Turn it over to you, Veronica.
Thank you so much. Let's see if my work's as easy as Marcus. I'm going to try to put my presentation. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting us to be here with all of you today. And I'm going to share a little bit how the workplace literacy program works for the literacy volunteers of Collier County. We are 100% volunteers. So that means a great deal to us, because these are individuals, teachers, retired teachers, professionals that are giving their time to help us. We have been in the community for over 37 years. So it is well known as a small organization that is there to support the community. So the workplace literacy really has taken off in the last 4 years. Primarily, we have seen the growth after COVID. What is happening in the community, and you probably have experienced this, is that everywhere you go is now hiring. Everyone is looking for workers. Everyone wants quality workers. And unfortunately, sometimes they're not prepared. They may not have the skills necessary for that job. Naples is a service industry community, primarily hospitality and other services. So the employers actually started coming to us, and we did some advertising, but primarily by word of mouth, by our networking meetings with the business centers. They actually came to us for help. So that's how we have grown the workplace literacy program, trying to focus on the needs of that employer. And so we do have several other programs that are available to any adult learner, whether they're in the workplace literacy program. Many of them that have started under workplace literacy actually are benefiting from the other programs that we offer, such as the health literacy program, the digital literacy program, and so forth. But this workplace literacy is primarily a partnership with the employers based on their needs. So you have to forgive me, I'm going to be coughing a few times. And so it is a win-win situation for everyone, for the associates, the students, and the teachers as well. They have really enjoyed. So, let me see. So the goals of the program that we actually have is, again, to help the students in their place of employment. And 90% of the programs we have, excuse me, they are on site. I hope I can finish. So again, going to the, I have one. Going back to the focus that we have is, do it by. My advice is to not go near airports. You catch all kinds of things. And I think I'm getting some. So the very first thing in the program is that we focus in giving the associates, the students, the skills necessary to perform their jobs successfully. Maybe we'll give it to Gina for a little bit, but let me see if I can continue. So the primarily is to increase their language skills. Many of the hires for these companies, they have had to lower their expectations in their language skills because of the need to hire individuals. So one of the primary goals is how they can perform their job successfully. In our effort to customize the program to the employer, it requires some communication before we start the program at their location. Meaning we want to know what the employer needs, how these employees will benefit from workplace literacy vocabulary. So the curriculum is very customized to the work that they do. It is flexible. We work with the hours that are best for that employer. Some of them are very early, starting at 7:30 a.m. in the morning. Some are during lunchtime, and some are after work. The classes that work the best are the early classes, because like any adult educator knows, employees are tired. So at the end of their shift or at the end of the work schedule, sometimes that retention is not as great as we would like it to be. Now, there's also options. The employer is a partner. That means that they want their employees to do their best. And we have some employers that have offer to pay to come to the class. So that works best because now they are being compensated for attending classes. And those are usually the bigger organizations or employers, such as Hilton, and they provide a training room with laptops, and that works perfectly when they can do that. So the employers that are not able to compensate the employees for their classes usually then try to do their very best for the best time of those employees. So they are at different times, at different locations, depending on their sites, and that has worked very good. Hold on. So, like I mentioned before, the goal is to develop their English skills in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And it all depends on the need of that employer, once again. Primarily right now is in the oral skills, in the speaking and listening. Employees being able to communicate with their guests, being able to communicate with their supervisors, being able to understand as well, reading a memo. So we use a lot of the realia from that particular employer. We collect employees' handbooks, policies, and we make sure that the student has an opportunity to understand those handbooks or policies that they have in place. And so they have seen the benefit of improving the employees' understanding, especially new hires. Some of the programs, they are repeaters. That means that they have a waiting list for employees that they want to be part of this program. And so we start with new hires primarily, the ones that have very low English language proficiency. And then those students on the second round may go to a more rigorous curriculum. And so they are trying to really give all the employees an opportunity to be part of the program as well. Because of being able to understand their duties and responsibility, the feedback we're getting also is that their safety rates are increasing. That means they're being careful and understand, let's say housekeepers, what kind of chemicals that they have to use and so forth. Our program basically has a 2-hour session twice a week. So it could be 4 hours a week or 3 hours, sometimes 1.5 hours twice a week. And we have one location that actually currently has one class at 8 a.m. and one class at 3 p.m. And they meet Mondays and Thursdays. We also have the flexibility to offer the employer a hybrid model of instructional delivery. That means that because the students' work schedule and personal needs does not allow them to come to class twice a week, they come to class once a week at their site, and the next class is hybrid, it's online. So we do have one employer doing a hybrid model. And that employer also decided to make sure the employees understands this is something that the company is investing on you, and we would like for you to be able to stay as long as possible. So we also have a very good partnership in recognizing them in all of our social media and so forth. So basically, when we do this program, is to improve the students' language proficiency, but also that customer relations, again, going back to the hospitality service industry. And they are, in a way, retaining their employees. because the high need at this moment, their investment in that employee to stay longer is crucial for many of the employers. So they are seeing that win-win possibility. We do keep it to a 10 students maximum per class. We found that smaller classes are much better for those employees that are struggling with the language. And we also, we do pre-tests and post-tests all of the associates, employees. I call them associates because the employers calls them associates and we call them students. But they are pre-tested, so we also divide the classes by level if possible. If we are not able, let's say, to have a lower level class, and it has to be a mix, a differentiated instruction type of model, we always have a backup tutor or a pull-out tutor that would work with the lower level students. So we also provide that for them. But we keep it at 10 because we do find that they it's a 12-week or 15-week, depending on their need. And so it is very customized. The curriculum is very customized to their needs, as well as providing all of the resources and the books that they need. So our experience, what happened when we realized that the workplace literacy is growing, is that we could not do this just with volunteer teachers. So we focus on providing certification, the teachers that are retired, teachers that have experience in the work in a classroom, and we also give them a stipend for the 12 and 15 weeks. We could not accommodate the needs of the tutors, the volunteer tutors, so we needed to have a consistent commitment that they would be doing this 12 weeks consistently. And so we decided to do a stipend for the instructors, as well as selecting the tutors that had a stronger background in education. So primarily, celebrate. I just wanted to share some of the pictures because they recognize the effort that the students have done. This is from J.W. Marriott, which is one of the largest hotels in Naples, and also Crystal Shores. We have Clean Florida. We have a couple of the housekeeping company, and we also have a restaurant employees. So they primarily, again, focus on culinary and chef and cooking vocabulary. But the celebrations are crucial as a word of mouth that this is worth it. So that's where that waiting list comes from, because the employees are really recognized, they're graduates of the program. And so they get their certificate, they get their recognition. And so we're very excited that the programs are growing and that there is a waiting list for the workplace literacy program that we're offering. So I will add my information in the chat box. And if you are have any questions or like to contact me in our curriculum design, that is what has taken us a great deal of effort to customize the curriculum to the employer. And that has been a success for us. So thank you so much for being patient with me and my coughing spells during this presentation. So all the best, and I highly encourage locations to look into the workplace literacy because there is a great need for our students to succeed in their work. And even though this is through the employer, we're helping the students succeed and retain their jobs. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you, Veronica. That was very informative, and really appreciate your working through that. I know it can be a little challenging when you're feeling a little under the weather, but excellent information there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gina. Gina?
Good morning, everybody. I don't have a PowerPoint to share, so you're just stuck with me and my stories, but I'm the executive director of the Adult Literacy League here in Orlando. We serve 3 Central Florida counties, Orange, Osceola, and Seminole. I started with the organization in '99 as a volunteer and have worked in just about every possible role. They can't get rid of me. So I have experience in programs and services. I started our organization's ESOL program back in 2005, official ESOL program, and everything from fundraising, and now the executive director for, I think Marcus and I both started at the same time as executive directors. So about 5 years in this new role. And workplace literacy and definitely community partnerships is a huge part of our service. Just a little bit of information about who we serve and what we do. We are also, like Veronica's organization, a volunteer-based organization. We serve around, these days, post-pandemic, we're back up to about 1,300 to 1,500 adult learners annually, with around 250 to 300 active volunteers at any given time. Our staff is made up of 7, 1 part-timer and 6 full-timers. And what's important to this idea of community partnership and workplace literacy and workplace literacy partnership is that we do have our fundraising manager here at the League is also our communications manager. And working underneath our fundraising and communications manager is a community engagement specialist. She is young and vibrant and really engaged with the community. She rarely says no to attending a community fair, whether it's a government, local government, or community partners, United Way. She never says no. So nights, weekends, attending those outreach opportunities are vital to first making these kinds of connections and relationships, but then stewarding them and encouraging them to grow. I saw a comment in the chat from Michelle about sticker shock, and I'm going to address that because it's definitely something that we encounter all the time. But sometimes the stewardship piece and the relationship building helps get us over that hump. So what's most important for us is to know that all of the workplace and community partnerships that we're engaged in at the Adult Literacy League really are an evolution of relationship building through, participation in community events and partnering with other, not just literacy and education organizations, but nonprofit community service organizations, Department of Children and Families, United Way, United Against Poverty, our local homeless service organizations. So, and we view all these partnerships as an opportunity to spread the word about what we do. Even though we've been in our community serving since 1968, I hear all the time from people that they didn't know we were here. They didn't know how we served. So we take those opportunities whenever we get them. For us, these workplace and community partnerships we participate in really like 3 kinds. The first is like our government and community partnerships, which have been ongoing for a really long time. I said I was a volunteer since '99, and we've been doing it since then. And we partner with our local government, Department of Corrections, to provide literacy instruction in local corrections. I think Marcus does the same thing. So Orange County Public Schools functions to provide GED instruction in Orange County corrections. However, those students who are TABE testing on entrance or on intake below 5th grade level often don't have education opportunities while they're in local county correction, which can be for a period of, you know, a week to a year. So Orange County's partnership with the Adult Literacy League means education opportunities for those students who wouldn't qualify for GED, pre-GED, other adult programs that are offered there. That this relationship or this partnership, they in corrections, Orange County government pays the Adult Literacy League an hourly rate to provide a paid instructor to be there for a certain number of hours a week. What we choose to use material wise, curriculum wise, it's completely up to us. So we do have a lot of freedom, but we also have, you know, somebody who's a attorney in Venezuela and somebody who's from Orlando and reading at a 1st grade level in the same class. So a lot of times it's, you know, really like a big tutoring session, and our instructor really has to be gifted at working with someone here and someone here and keeping everybody happy inside. This is not terribly profitable for our organization in terms of funding. However, we do view this as an outreach opportunity. Our hope is, and it's always celebrated and super exciting for us, when somebody is released from corrections and comes to us as a returning citizen. We're thrilled. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen, and so really our view of our partnership with Orange County Corrections is that it's an opportunity to make a difference in the lives of the individuals who are involved with the correctional system and law enforcement, and let them know that there are options for them. We're here, we're flexible, we're not judgmental. We provide, like Marcus said, a safe and happy and pleasant space for them to learn without judgment. And let's be frank, there are chances that these, because of their involvement with the criminal justice system, they may not be eligible to be on the campus of Orange County Public Schools adult education, but we're able to, as a nonprofit organization, work around that. So government and community relationships just take lots of stewardship, lots of relationship building, and also you have to be prepared for what happens politically at election time and under new mayors and new sheriffs. Focus and their focus really can change. So there have been times over the years where they don't want to spend, the county doesn't want to spend the money on this program, and they'll give it to somebody, a faith-based institution, for example, and then a year later come back and say, okay, it didn't work. The volunteer wasn't consistent. We need to throw a little bit of money at this to make it happen. So never super profitable, but it's a great outreach opportunity and a great community stewardship initiative for our organization. We have worked with several companies over the years, most recently a call center, a financial company, a credit card company, actually, that has a large bilingual call center located here in Orlando, serving the entire country and even some other countries. We get reach outs periodically to work with call center staff to do workplace specific, and I think Veronica mentioned that too, developing a curriculum specific to the employer. They've reached out for workplace specific instruction For example, they require that their call center employees speak both English and Spanish. However, in the chat, maybe their English language literacy is lower than their Spanish language literacy, so they struggle with some higher level communications. I'm going to share my screen super quickly just to show you a sample of we have like a rubric that I use. It's really just it's where the sticker shock comes in, Michelle. It's a sharing with the potential partner how much they're looking at incurring for something like this. So we're paying our ESOL instructors anywhere based on experience from $20 to $25, but we're going to ask for an hourly rate of $40, which allows us all the things that we need to cover: workers' comp, payroll taxes, materials, assessment, that it's all easy, it's all adjustable. We make sure that it's as affordable as possible, but it is so labor intensive, especially when we're talking about developing materials, or in some cases purchasing specialized English language literacy materials for industries. For example, Cambridge has a great workplace English language literacy series for hotel and hospitality, for accounting and bookkeeping, but it's expensive. So we have this easily customizable but kind of generalized rubric that I use, and depending on what sticker, what their sticker shock or what the reaction is, it is customizable and it is adjustable. Especially if it's something a partnership and a relationship that we really want to cultivate and not scare them off. But lucky for us here in Central Florida and Orlando, two of our universities and colleges, Valencia College and University of Central Florida, they both offer non-EAP, so not for academic purposes, English language programs, and they're both really, really expensive. So we usually come out looking okay in this, but it is customizable. We also assess the students on the front and the back end. We do put a paid instructor in for both this government partnership in corrections and these corporate fee-for-service. The definition of a volunteer is that they don't have to show up if they don't want to. And in order to maintain these relationships, we find that we really need to put in a paid instructor in. These post-pandemic days have been really challenging for us for recruiting part-time, especially part-time with just a few hours. For example, our corrections literacy instructor on the men's unit, it's a 6-hour-a-week gig. Women's unit, it's a 3-hour-a-week gig. We always cringe when we find out we may lose our instructor because it's not it's a challenge to recruit for that. So that's one of the cons to that. But the corporate fee for service, it's typically an 8 to 12 week class where we assess on the front and the back end. We ask the students to do a self-assessment. We ask the instructors to provide like a wrap-up report, and we present that to the employer along with pre and post test scores. And so they've got the opportunity to share with their HR departments and their staffing supervisors to expand more widely. We've done that with, like I said, this credit card company. We worked with Humana Insurance call center. We're working with an industrial cleaning, national industrial cleaning company in Florida. They function mostly in resorts. So that's a new one we have in the works. But then I think the third kind of collaboration with regards to providing workplace literacy and then community partnership is we see it as like a true collaboration. Oftentimes there's no money changing hands. They're not. Oh, back to the corporate. We did work with one company real quickly. And as a nonprofit organization, a 501c3, they were actually the company was requested making a charitable contribution to the organization. Obviously that benefits them, and then we were able to structure it that way as well, instead of having it be a fee for service. Rather, they made a contribution and we made a contribution to their staff, to their company. But this true collaboration, I'll give you an example of it. Really, it's not money changing hands. It's an opportunity for us to expand who we're serving, grow our student population, and really just reach with our mission to build a literate Central Florida, to reach new individuals and adult learners. We have a daycare, a local childcare provider, a preschool, and they pride themselves. It's a small family-owned daycare, but serves several hundred families, and they pride themselves on providing a bilingual education, preschool, early childhood education to the children enrolled, Spanish and English. However, the teachers went to the owner and were feeling intimidated, not prepared, nervous about communicating in English with the parents. They're not as nervous to speak in English with the little ones. There's no fear of judgment there. But when the parents come to pick the kids up at night, the teachers were panicked and nervous about making mistakes. So for this, for the preschool owner, coming up with $40 an hour to put an instructor in when she's, struggles to pay the salaries of her preschool teachers, she couldn't make it work. She just couldn't make it work. And we always put these kinds of special opportunities out to I said we have anywhere from 250 to 300 volunteers at any given time. We put cool, crazy volunteer opportunities out to our folks all the time. Sometimes people bite, sometimes they don't. We put it out. Nobody bit on, volunteering to teach in this preschool. So the more that the daycare owner thought about it, and the more she really wanted to help her team be successful and feel comfortable in the workplace, she decided that maybe she's the volunteer. So we partner with organizations. If they can identify the volunteer, then we're happy to support them through, we train new volunteers every month. We use ProLiteracy, Cambridge, really, we have great materials that we can share that are easy for non-professional educators to use. They're heavily scripted. We have 30 other classes happening during the week so that these volunteers can observe and get to know what others are doing successfully, and then feel more comfortable. So that's where we're going with this childcare provider. She's the volunteer. We train her to be a tutor. We support her with materials, continuing education, and we co-enroll her staff as Adult Literacy League students. So on our, grant from Orange County and from Osceola County, we're able to increase our numbers based on these kinds of partnerships. That happens a lot. Typically with faith-based organizations, we'll have a small church with a huge Haitian Creole population, and they don't have the money to spend. And UCF, University of Central Florida, comes in and wants $500 a student for a 12-week class. Totally impossible for this to happen. But if you've got the volunteer or the patience to wait for us to find a volunteer as we work through that, then that is another way that we can make this work. But circling back to what I said at the beginning, really, all of this is is viewed by all of us our whole team as outreach opportunities, community engagement opportunities, and really a literate Central Florida makes sense for everybody. A literate workforce is, like Veronica said, it's safer. They're having fewer accidents. They're having fewer call outs. So it just makes sense for us all. So if we can't quite make the money piece work, there are other ways to make this happen. But I would highly recommend having, even if it's a volunteer, if you're a small volunteer-based organization, identifying a volunteer or a pack of volunteers who are willing to talk about what you do and why it's important and why it's beautiful and why it's fun to the community. That's where all this magic starts to happen. I put my information in the chat, so please feel free to reach out for anything. I'll share my rubric, although sometimes, like I said, Michelle, I think it was, about asked the sticker shock question. I keep going back to that. Sometimes I go back to the drawing board and there's no way I'm ever going to get, the $40 an hour I hoped for, but we'll settle for 29 and it covers payroll, taxes, and everything. Our goal is to serve, not to not serve. So we make it work however we have to. Hopefully that makes sense and gives like a different, a little bit different perspective, maybe a little less formal, and a little bit more about community building and putting our mission out into the community.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Gina. Appreciate that. So we have about 10 minutes here. So we're going to get to the Q&A. I know a number of you have put some questions in the Q&A here. So we're going to start with Michelle's question, which is for you, Marcus. How did you assess the need within the community? Our area, she's saying her area, has a lot of services, but we want to make sure that we are filling the most need.
Yeah, and I was multitasking. I was listening and answering questions at the same time. So I put some answers in the chat, but
Okay,
I'm
you already
addressing real quick. Hopefully that allows for more questions too. But very quickly, what I was mentioning was the PIAC study was really helpful for us from a quantitative standpoint in terms of showing people what the need was in the community. But from a more on the ground standpoint, it was based on the conversations with the partners. So we really just started by asking one organization, hey, can what we do be of service to you? And they said, oh my gosh, yes, we've been looking for this. And it just mushroomed from there. It snowballed. It was actually somewhat overwhelming. And then we would go to another one and get the same reaction. And it was always kind of, oh my gosh, where have you been all this time? And then word spread among all the other partners. We would get calls from people saying, hey, I just talked to my colleague over at such and such an agency. They said you provide adult education and adult literacy. And again, they knew the adult literacy piece, but they didn't so much know the adult education piece of it with the high school completion. So that was how we gauged that need, just by talking to people.
Yeah, and as an organization that's grown so much over the last few years, would you equate a fair amount of that growth to these partnerships? You said you went from a few hundred to 900 people.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the partnerships and also the expansion of services. So unlike probably many of my peers on the call, we were solely focused on adult literacy. We didn't do anything above volunteer tutoring at the lowest level 1, level 2 thing. Once we looked to our peers like Gina and everybody else who was offering a much broader spectrum all the way up through high school completion, that just opened the floodgates for us. We were really off to the races at that point. So.
Right, because you weren't offering ESL in the beginning, right?
Yeah, we weren't even offering ESL, so now we're doing that too, and that's grown too. Yep.
Karen Strange has a question. Do the employers offer to pay their employees for attending classes or tutoring sessions?
Yeah, they did not pay, but they provided breakfast and they scheduled it out of the preference for the employees. They said, yes, they want this. They want it on site. Can you please do it on a Friday morning so that we can do it before our shift? And they said, absolutely, and we'll provide breakfast. So.
Okay. And Veronica, I know you do a lot of workplace literacy. Do your employers tend to pay for that time?
It rarely happens, but we did have Hilton that did pay for their classes, and that was the class that had the highest retention. So we do know that it works. The incentives they provide within the company is also very important. The employers recognizing, like I said, in celebrations, they are sometimes in line for a promotion. So they understand the commitment that they're giving is also benefiting their long-term employment. And so the Crystal Shores Association offer a laptop for the employees. So there are other incentives besides paying for these sessions that the employers can provide to encourage their students, their employees to continue participate.
Okay. And Michelle had a question and that she actually directed to you, Veronica, around the sticker shock. Now, Gina touched upon it, but do you have any thoughts on the employers feeling a little bit of a sticker shock when they come to you?
We really spend a great deal of time, not a great deal, but several sessions to make sure that the employer understands our needs and their needs and how we can help each other. So there hasn't been a situation where we have encountered any type of negative. We have only encountered with the employers appreciation, and they are what I would say over the moon because we have been able to help their employees. So we work with them, and so that has never been for us so far an issue of working it out.
Well, you mentioned that you have a stipended situation, so that's a little bit of a middle ground between volunteers and maybe a more of a traditional paid instructor.
Right.
Can you share a little bit more about how much you provide stipend wise? Because that I'm sure that helps to keep your costs down a bit, right?
So we want to recognize their efforts and their commitment to be twice a week at a different location. They have to drive there, some of them, 45 minutes and so forth. So we want them to recognize that we appreciate what they do. And that was the decision to pay a stipend. So a stipend, so far, it can go, we started at 500. And if it's a longer 15-week, we provide $1,000
Okay.
per teacher.
So the 500 is for more like a 7 or 8 week class?
Well, believe it or not, we have offer, and some of our volunteers, recognizing that I want to give back, they have accepted a less stipend. So I have great people. I really do. So they gave us back what we gave them, they gave us back. So that's a wonderful commitment. But the commitment was necessary because they had to understand you have to be available for this amount of weeks. And so we wanted to avoid replacing, because that's what we did a few years back. They had personal issues or vacations, and so we needed someone that could say, I am available for the next 12 weeks.
Okay. We have time for just one more question. Does anybody else have another question? You can just unmute yourself if you do. Go ahead, Michelle.
Veronica, I'm so sorry. I'm a little confused, and thank you for sticking in here with us when you're not feeling well. So I hope you're feeling better soon.
It was a little spell. Now I feel better because I'm here with you.
Good. So I'm a little confused. I'm hoping that you can help clear it up in my mind. It seemed that you were saying that not all of your workforce literacy collaborators pay for it, but then some of them obviously do. So could you?
That's the decision of the employer if they want to pay their employees for attending class.
Oh no, I beg your pardon. To pay you for the contract. I'm talking about the collaboration between you and the employer directly.
We basically have a contract for them to cover the cost of books and materials.
but not
So
necessarily
yes,
teaching books,
it's
materials,
a
teaching time?
cost fee.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And do you include in that administration cost, admin cost?
No, we actually try to focus on what materials and books we are going to provide. We give them the option to also purchase a book if they wish for the students, one that we recommend, or we provide a customized binder. So as of now, the administration cost comes from other fundings that we apply for.
Oh, okay. So, and can I ask both of you, what do you use for an assessment tool? Such a short-term window, you know, if you're doing 8, 12-week programs, I'm just curious what you use for an assessment tool.
So we have used CASAS for the last 4 years. So we do use, we understand that it's a short period, but it still gives us a data that we can provide. So we do not necessarily share the results with the employer. We primarily do the CASAS pre-testing for the placement. So we tell the employer whether they are low, intermediate, or advanced, but there's no sharing of scale scores with them. But we do want an improvement of at least 2 points in those 12 weeks. So we have a goal of 2 to 3 points improvement. And so far, the percentage of improvement for the workplace literacy have been over 80% of all employees participating in the program, improving 2 to 3 points. That means within that scale range of the CASAS ranges, there is movement.
And we use at the Adult Literacy League a really easy to use and easy to administer paper-based test, Best Literacy. It's not perfect, it's not CASAS, but it's affordable, it's disposable, and you need not as much instruction in between pre and post to administer it.
We use Best Plus as well, but there is, you know, it's following, you know, their structure. It's not a good assessment because we focus on the, you know, conversational English skill assessments as well. So
we don't use
not
Plus,
the time
we
period
use,
that they
we
suggest.
use Best Literacy, the paper-based test.
Okay.
And I think the recommendation is like 30 hours of instruction in between pre and post, but it's up to the discretion of the instructor. And it gives us, it at least gives us a good look. It's not perfect, but it's affordable, easy, takes an hour, and it's on paper.
Quick and dirty.
Yep.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
thank you.
Just as a point, CASAS also has a paper-based test that we have used, as well as they have an appraisal that is basically 30 minutes, and that appraisal cannot be used traditionally for reporting purposes for the state. We don't belong to that. We are nonprofit, but the appraisal does give you a picture of the level of that student, and that's what we want to focus. What level of English proficiency are those students at the moment that we give them the assessment?
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Veronica, and thank you to all of our panelists. We really appreciate you sharing all this great information about the outstanding programs that you're doing in partnership with businesses and other agencies in your community. So lots to process here. I've been making lots of notes myself. So thanks again. Really appreciate it. With that, we will take a little bit of a break here. And if you can join us back at 10:30 for our next session, and you don't really need to leave. We'd encourage you probably just to stay on and mute yourself or what have you. We'll be welcoming Sarah to do the next presentation at that time. So until then, a few more minutes, 10:30, we'll see you back then. Thank you. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started. So welcome back, everybody. And our next session, I think we're in for a treat. It's my pleasure to introduce Sarah Casisio, who is the director of the Adult Literacy and Learning Impact Network, better known as All In. Some of you may have heard of All In's National Action Plan for Adult Literacy that they launched a few years ago. It got quite a bit of attention in our field. The Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy is the managing organization of this network that includes a dozen other national organizations that have come together to work collaboratively to advance and advocate for adult education and literacy. And this includes the establishment of the first ever U.S. Senate caucus, bipartisan caucus on adult literacy that was established last year. So they're doing some really good work. And Sarah's going to join us to share a little, or she's joining us today to share a little bit about All In, but also to share some research that they commissioned recently that looked at how business leaders and policy influencers view adult literacy and the need for adult literacy services. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you so much. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Gerald Akwole. Gerald, if you want to say hello.
Hi, Gerald.
Hi, everyone.
Gerald is working with me this summer through the New America Build for Good project, and he's amazing. He's going into his senior year of college, and I said, do you have to go back to school? Because it's been really great having Gerald work with me. So good morning, everyone. Some of you I may know, some are new faces. My name is Sarah Casisio, as Greg mentioned. We're so excited to be here. Really value all of your work at the Florida Literacy Coalition. And as Greg knows, I've been reaching out to him several times, to get his input and insight into some of our national work. So just really grateful to be here. Prior to joining the Barbara Bush Foundation, I was at Digital Promise, which is a national ed tech nonprofit and I was researching the use of digital tools and technologies with adult learners. And then before that, I was in direct service for about 10 years in New York City, high school equivalency, English as a second language, thinking about career and technical education and pathways, mostly for new immigrant students, but also students who are incarcerated or coming out of incarceration for youth and adults. So always like to be back with my practitioners and people leading the charge in their communities. As you can see, I'm in DC now. From Boston, lived in New York for a decade, and now I'm in DC. And I guess I live here, just bought a house, and slowly making my way down the coast. So happy to be with Florida today. So I'll get started sharing a little bit about All In, and then more sharing some of the research findings that we've had today. This can be very conversational. If you have a question or have something in the chat, feel free. And I also have time for a little bit of discussion, so it's not just me talking at you for 60 minutes. Again, All In, I'm the director of the Adult Literacy and Learning Impact Network, which is convened by the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy. And by the end of this session, we'll share a little bit more about the collective impact. I also would love you to better understand the perspectives of employers and policy influencers in this space, and to co-generate some ideas for market research that we're working on now that Greg is actually participating in. So All In, the idea behind All In is that all of us are working really hard to advance adult literacy in our own spaces and places. But what can we do as a national collective if we, convene resources, streamline activities, and really think about who can do what to advance all of our work? And so it is a coalition of 14 organizations. We are funded primarily by Dollar General Literacy Foundation right now, although we're always raising funds. But that includes ProLiteracy, American Library Association, COABE. Raise your hand if you've been to a ProLiteracy or a COABE conference. So you may be familiar with some of these organizations. And so we're all trying to work together to get, the same message, the same agenda. Our vision is that every adult can easily access high quality, effective support to improve foundational skills. We recognize while this does affect everybody, it doesn't affect everybody at the same rate. So we want to prioritize, historically excluded communities who have not had access to high quality education. There's 3 main goals of the National Action Plan, and happy to follow up with some materials: increasing access to literacy skills and supports, strengthening quality of those learning experiences, and promoting uptake in high quality programs. We really view ourselves as a convener. We're not a direct service provider, although many of us have experience in direct service. But most importantly, we want to center the adult learner lived experiences in the work that we're doing, whether it's advocacy, whether it's design or service delivery. I think we're still very much a program-based adult learning ecosystem. We want to shift to be more of a learner-centered, human-centered system. So we're using the definition of PIAC. I assume most people understand what PIAC is, so I'll just breeze through, but the assessment comes out every 7 years and showing, people's literacy skill levels, and this is an international assessment. The definition that we're using is from PIAC, which you could see it's a lot of verbs, right? We're trying to think beyond literacy levels and think about how people navigate their life, how they understand, evaluate, engage. We're about to enter another election. All of these verbs, are very important so people are able to participate and make decisions about their lives and their families. So I pulled some data from the Florida Literacy Coalition, but one of the things we are looking at is on a national scale, what the literacy challenges. And just in Florida, about 1 in 4 adults are at or below literacy level 1, which means they can't read more than simple sentences. So this is a challenge that we, hope you'll join us. Well, you're already doing the work, but, being part of the all-in community. And I can go into the need a little bit, although you might be very familiar with this. These are national stats, which is that 43 million adults have foundational literacy needs. And we know this impacts all races, but not at the same level of proportion. So we also are thinking about English skills. We're thinking about digital literacy skills. For example, 92% of jobs now require digital skills, but 1/3 of workers are still struggling to advance in their skills. And we also recognize that in incarcerated settings, this is a huge area where we know 60 to 70% of adults who are incarcerated struggle with low literacy. My own dad got his GED and most of college while in prison. And I worked closely with prison education. So I'm in New York. So I know this can make such a huge impact, right? It's one of the areas that we really want to expand in. And we know there's a correlation between health and literacy levels, right? So it really does impact everything. So more than half of adults in the US live with 6th grade literacy skills or below, and nearly 1 in 5 live with 3rd grade literacy skills or below. And as you saw, it's 1 in 4 in Florida. And then fewer than 10% of adults are currently enrolled in programming. So we're really doing as all in is trying to target the rest of the population that are struggling with adult learning that are not necessarily enrolled in programming and understanding how we can increase access. So to solve this challenge, a few years back, and Greg was likely part of those meetings, maybe some of you were as well, is that over 100 literacy experts came together to design the National Action Plan for Adult Literacy. It has really 5 complementary initiatives: engaging adult learners as leaders, supporting adult literacy instructors, and a few other things that we know we all could focus our attention on to advance as a collective. And this is sort of the last slide about all in, but we are really thinking about engaging people who are not part of the adult literacy sector as our main audience, right? So that's why today I'll talk about the employer and the policy influencer perspectives, but we want to make clear the connection between health and literacy, the economy and literacy. Barbara Bush Foundation commissioned some work couple years back that found we're losing on an annual basis $2.2 trillion because of low literacy skills. This is also a national security issue. We know that people are struggling on entrance exams into the military. And then there's also, misinformation, disinformation, lack of critical thinking. These are all related to national security. Civic engagement, as I mentioned, coming into the next election cycle, we know that literacy is correlated with voter turnout. We also know that the number one indicator of a child's learning and literacy is their mother's academic achievement level. So at the Barbara Bush Foundation, always thinking about the family literacy model. Whenever I'm working late, I think, okay, my kids will be all right because the mother's academic, achievement level is connected to their learning and development. Finally, as I mentioned, the prison education is one of the only areas where we could say there's a causal relationship between education and reducing recidivism. All the rest are really correlational. This one is like, if you get education while in prison, you are less likely to, I can't remember the recidivize, is that a word? Or commit a crime again. So a couple of the things we've done over the last year, and I'm not sure if I mentioned, we're just 18 months into this collective impact. So we take comments, suggestions for improvement. But we published a paper called Investing in Multiple Literacies to really understand the dynamics between health, civics, economic literacy, financial literacy, and how foundational reading and writing really is the key piece to all of those, to being able to unlock, skills in all of these areas. As Greg mentioned, we're also working with the U.S. Senate Caucus on Adult Literacy with co-chair Senator Susan Collins of Maine and Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island. And we hosted our first in-person Senate briefing last September. We definitely hope to do this again to really talk about the connection between economics and adult literacy. So that we've also hosted 2 virtual briefings. So this is another avenue that we continue to explore. We say advocacy with a little a, because we're not lobbying, but we are doing informational talks. We also had a small grants research this year where we were able to fund 5 short-term community engaged projects, trying to put some of the resources back into the community and learn from what practitioners are doing. And finally, you really do need to have a regional connection to test out some of these ideas. We've been working in the Low Country of Charleston, South Carolina, to map the different access points to adult literacy and to explore how we can do collective impact at the local level. So that is really the main idea, is that adult learners are at the center of what we're trying to do. I would say this is the goal. We're not quite there yet. But doing this research that we are going to talk a little bit more about today, you can really start to see all the different forms of reference when it comes to adult literacy and what that means. So I'm just going to take a sip of water. So last year, we kind of recognized that the baseline is that people do not know about this issue. They do not understand it. They also don't understand the connection between literacy and all these other factors. What we wanted to do is have some evidence behind that. So we partnered with FTI Consulting to do massive research with policy influencers and employers. And since I'm in DC, I'll start with the policy influencers. So we conducted a survey last November with 200 DC policy influencers, and these were in the education, labor and employment, and financial or military defense, kind of those areas that I shared before, and to understand what their perceptions are of literacy. We surveyed Democrats and Republicans, And we really wanted to pay attention to specific things related to literacy, education, and labor. So familiarity with the issue, and I will definitely send you the full reports. I didn't conduct this research, so if I make a mistake here or there, forgive me. But for the familiarity of adult literacy really does mean different things to different people. Most people were somewhat familiar, like 65%, and 76% knew somebody that had adult literacy issues, which we thought was super interesting, but that didn't always translate into action around the topic. When it came to the policy influencers, and that could be staffers, members of the House, it could be people that are lobbyists, right? Like different people that write bills. The top associations were English literacy, financial literacy, and digital literacy. And you can see basic writing, comprehension, basic math. Those were kind of lower on the totem pole of what people thought of when they heard the term literacy. They also greatly underestimated the scale of this problem, which was alarming to us, but also gave us more like fuel for the work, which is almost 60% underestimated, this challenge. And the groups that were the top 5 groups that were more likely to exhibit low literacy rates, they did have this somewhat accurate: socioeconomically disadvantaged, people with criminal records, residents of rural communities, and currently incarcerated people. And so there was like some understanding that low literacy connected to some of these other areas, but still really not full understanding of the scale of the issue. Everybody did recognize there's some impact with the US economy, but really not to the extent that it is. And many believed it to be moderate. And so 74% said it's a moderate impact, even though we know it's much bigger impact than that. So 99% said yes, there's a literacy impact on the economy. And some of the areas they said were higher poverty rates, talent and workforce shortages, reliance on government assistance. So these are some of the areas that were recognized as being impacted. However, the majority of policy influencers thought things were getting better when it comes to literacy. They thought that the current efforts to increase literacy rates were somewhat effective or very effective, which, may be true in pockets, but overall, we haven't really seen much change on a national scale of our literacy levels. And the perceived changes that people thought it really had improved in the last few years. I guess if you go back to think about how they're defining literacy, that makes sense. Even though we gave them a definition of literacy, what they're thinking about English literacy, financial literacy, and whether or not it's improved. And so I always find this slide to be super informative, because they think that things are getting better and it's not too bad when it comes to literacy. The issue really falls down on the lower on the priority list, right? So adult ed was below public education, which we are mostly talking about K through 12, workforce shortages, educational freedom, which I think has to do with school choice, and some other issues, raising minimum wage, even curricula for K through 12 was higher on the list than adult education or foundational literacy. And the one good thing about this is that people did recognize that this can only be solved together. And so they recognize that K through 12, colleges, local governments, federal government kind of all need to be part of this solution. Although you can see employers were way down on the list and libraries were last, which I thought was fascinating about like the value of libraries connected to literacy. They weren't making that connection. And perceptions about who should solve this problem are, not that surprising in our current, economy. It's like the government should do more, companies should do more, right? Like we're going back and forth instead of all thinking about how we can collaborate. Any questions on the policy influencers, or should I keep going to the employers?
I had one question. Did you see, were there significant differences within that sort of policy influencer category? Because I noted you had labor unions, you had think tanks and so forth. Was there fairly good uniformity, or did folks that were sort of from a labor union maybe have different perspective than, somebody that works in Congress?
That's a good question. That question came up at the state directors meeting too, and I've been meaning to ask FTI to drill down. They do have, I don't know if they ran those stats, although it might be in the full report. Because I know for employers, they did run correlations with industry and responses. So I'll find out about that. I'll look in the full report, and if not, we can go back to FTI to drill down a little bit more, but that would be a really good question. I know they did do correlations with Democrats, Republicans, and independents and found more uniformity than difference when it comes to perceptions, which I thought was interesting.
That's a good thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Exactly. Yes, and that's what we thought too, is we have something here that everybody can agree on, that this is a big issue, right? And so that was motivating for us. Question though about alignment. Okay, so for US employers, this data was also, I thought, super interesting. We surveyed, last October, and medium and large companies, mid-level, senior executives. There were a lot of hiring managers, supervisors, and people that work directly with employees. So it wasn't all just the suits that were surveyed. We also surveyed, people at different levels, and they removed any suspicious response patterns, like people that just click through. You can kind of tell that in the analyses. And there was also a careful review of more open-ended responses in this one, which I think is interesting. We also focus specifically on industries that tend to employ people with low literacy: logistics and transport, retail and consumer goods, wholesale and distribution, and food and beverage and restaurants. So logistics and transport could be like FedEx, or, lots of different manufacturing, shipping, things like that. And super interesting is that employers really understood more what adult literacy was, or, what we might think about it as: basic reading and writing skills, comprehension of written material, functional literacy was pretty high on the list, and English literacy. And so they're really viewing it more the way we might define, reading, writing, and numeracy and digital skills. So employers recognize let me get this right. So 40%, so 4 out of 10 employers said this is a widespread problem in their industries. And for them, low literacy is leading to billions of lost revenue every year. And so just in the next 12 months, people estimated $46 billion in lost revenue, which aligns to some of the findings from the Gallup study, which was a broader economic look. And this is only in the 4 industries. One of the things that's come up many times is health was not included as one of the industries, although we know this is a huge area that's impacted as well. And we also looked at, the revenue lost. Nearly 1/3 of employers feel that their employees do not have the minimum level of literacy required, which I thought was very profound. So these are people that are already hired, never mind recruitment, but just thinking about training and retention. People experienced, people were saying that a lot of their workers, a third of their workers needed more skills. This also aligns very well to the National Skills Coalition data point that I shared earlier, which 92% of workers require digital skills, but a third lack those skills, right? So there was a connection there. We also did a focus group with adult learners. It was 7 adult learners, and one person shared that they were up for a promotion, but didn't take it because they were anxious about how many emails they would have to read and respond to, right? So we know that literacy is impacting people's individual decisions on the job as well. And this, was reflected in both places. Literacy prevents some employees from realizing their full potential, impacts productivity, and leads to isolation. And again, these are what employers are saying. So they said some employees just can't reach their full potential. And also many times came up that other workers have to compensate for workers that struggle with literacy, and that affects staff morale. Feels like some people are doing more than others, like there's not equity in terms of access to training and support. We also found that employees with low literacy are more likely to leave the job. I wish I wrote down this data point, but there was just a new publication, and I think it was, don't quote me on this, but I think it was the National Workforce Solutions that found, like, times we talk about job mobility as being a positive thing, but among people with low literacy or people experiencing poverty, job mobility is actually sometimes negative, where people are taking jobs for lower money or more part-time, right? Like, job mobility does not equal upward mobility. And I think that this data reflects, that other work that's happening, that employees with low literacy are more likely to switch jobs, if they reach a point where they're struggling. We also talked about some of the other things that you might anticipate. Recruitment is a challenge, overall productivity is lower, and some people talked about they've had to hire additional people because of people may not have enough literacy skills that are already employed, right? So there were some real impacts seen. This slide I find to be one of the most relevant to the work of All In, that navigating digital tools was a challenge across all 4 industries. It was noted as one of the top 4 issues for food and beverage, for retail, for transportation, and for wholesale distribution. I know my dad was working briefly at FedEx, struggled with that digital device, especially in I'm sorry, he was at UPS, but during like holiday season where it's so overwhelming having to navigate those tools and devices, right, for people that are struggling with those areas. And employers recognize they need to do something, but they really don't know what to do. And I think we often blame corporates or employers, that they need to be doing more. In their defense, they don't always know how to address this issue. Their learning and development teams may not have, academic background or know how to teach adult learners. So they said that they would need greater support from community organizations, local governments, and local colleges and universities. So I'll pause there. It's a lot of information. I'm curious from all of you about any of this data. Does it resonate with you? What does it make you think of? What stands out to you? So I'll pause there and would love to hear from each of you. And if you don't mind, or from some of you, but if you don't mind sharing your name and your organization as well.
Hi, this is Karen Strange. I'm with the Leroy Collins Leon County Public Library, and I am very startled by how the libraries in general are not.
Thank you, Karen. I was also startled by that fact, right? And it was very low on the list of who should be involved in advancing literacy.
Hi, Michelle McLean from the Manatee Literacy Council in Bradenton, Florida. I appreciate all of this wonderful information, and I'm wondering, you know, as some of our organizations are trying to approach either community leaders or businesses about providing workplace literacy, is there kind of like a snapshot of this that's really digestible for us to use as kind of a marketing tool? You're muted.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for asking that. I'm going to drop into the chat right now a blog that we have. And if you click on the blog, which I just did, you can still see my screen, correct? There's an infographic at the top, which shares just some of the key points that can be printed with a QR code to the full data set. And I'll also share that All In is working on a communications campaign. So that's a little plug. If you can follow All In on LinkedIn, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. Let me put it into the chat. We are starting the campaign today, actually, so this aligns great with that and to try to get the word out. So if you could help us repost, we'll be posting every other week from now until Adult and Family Literacy Week. The Adult Literacy and Learning Impact Network, All In. You can find us on LinkedIn and also sign up for our newsletter. And yeah, we're really trying to get the word out there. We've been doing presentations. We're doing a social media campaign. We're speaking to the Senate caucus on this issue. But it's huge, right? And to your point, Michelle, one of the tactics we're thinking about next year is how can we support organizations at all levels to do more advocacy. And I think the word advocacy overwhelms people. It overwhelmed me, you know, when I first started getting in this space, and then I'm like, oh, it's just information. It's like I never went hiking before until I was 26. And then when I went, I said, oh, it's just walking in the woods, right? So advocacy is just information, getting it out there in a way that's understandable and actionable, and having a clear action item. So that's something we're working on now is, you know, what are the things we need to do with this information and who do we still need to reach? Other thoughts or questions?
I thought it was interesting, really, one of the standout data points that you mentioned was the fact that there's such a disconnect between the policy influencers and the employers with regard to sort of something as fundamental as what are they, you know, how do they define literacy or how do they view literacy? I mean, with the policy influencers, reading and writing skills instruction was like 5th or 6th down the list, but it was clearly number 1 with employers. And so that's, I'm not sure what to do with that information, but it just seems like there, you know, everybody isn't on the same page when they're, you know, when they're even hearing the word literacy and how they sort of interpret that in terms of sort of impact on society. And not to say that any of these things aren't important, they all are, but you know, there's that's a big differential there. Any thoughts on that?
I'm interested to hear I have some thoughts on that, but I would love to hear others' thoughts on that.
Okay. Anybody want to weigh in on that?
I mean, I have some thoughts, but I'm happy to hear other thoughts.
This is Diane Oropesa. I was just thinking how, I hate to say, I think maybe 10, 20 years ago, maybe, there was a big push on workforce, I mean, on the workplace literacy. And a lot of the employers would actually give time to their employees to work on their literacy. even getting a GED, and some of the adult schools were able to give a staff person to do that, help, go out to the employer workplace. And I don't know what happened to that, but it seems that was a good, something good that would come of that, because these employees were able to move up to a higher position. Do you know why this happened, or is just a trend that now employers don't do that as much?
Greg probably knows better than I do. I've been in the adult ed space about 12 years. I would get, maybe you're talking about equipped for the future. I don't know, Greg. But what I was thinking based on what you're saying is connected to what I was gonna say, is that the key word here is skills. And I think employers recognize that reading and writing is like part of skills. Whereas I think policy influencers are thinking about literacy in some other way. I've talked to a lot of funders, for example, who said like, they essentially say like, that's a cute issue, Sarah, right? Like, oh, the adult literacy, that's a nice issue. It feels like a charity issue, but it doesn't feel like a serious issue like climate change or like workplace training or workplace skills. And I think one of the takeaways for me is the need to really frame this about in the skills, right? That these are skills that people need to acquire, to participate in life, to advance in the workplace, to support their children, right? Like these are not nice to haves. These are need to have skills. And actually one of the funders I spoke to was like, just stop using the word literacy, right? Like just use the word skills, and I think you'll get a lot farther along. And so this is something we've been thinking a lot about, is how do we frame this issue in a way that really connects to every person? Because I do think the term literacy, and we've done some analysis in addition to this, we didn't publish this, but FTI did a digital scan online, like what are the key buzzwords, and literacy was really only, nobody Googles it, except people that work in it, right? It's not an issue that's at top of mind. It's not a kitchen table issue, put it that way, like Biden would say.
It was interesting, and don't mind me popping in here, but even one above adult education was career and technical skills. And we see a lot more often that employers are open to continuing education and certificates and providing those additional skills. But I think, framing the value that they will receive from their employers, not only staying with retention, and also confidence and upward mobility. Something that I heard at our conference was not just allowing them to survive and take a job that, is barely paying the bills or multiple jobs, but to be able to give people a career and know that they can have more and really explore that for themselves. So thank you so much for sharing, Sarah. This was also fantastic.
I think that confidence piece is huge, right? Everybody has experienced this, like a change in a person when they feel that they've got to the next level, right? It's a massive change, and employers see that.
I also wonder if, the employers are just more connected.
Yeah.
So maybe there are certain, issues around digital literacy and financial literacy, for example, that are kind of trending. They've gotten a little bit more attention as of late, and the policy folks maybe sort of more attuned with sort of those themes because they're hearing them a little bit more, whereas the employers, are really dealing with some of the fundamental issues with sort of having employees that can do their jobs on a day-to-day basis. And they really see that reading and writing component as sort of a key piece to it. I don't know, it's just conjecture, but I'm just wondering if there might be sort of some outside influences that are kind of having an effect here.
Right. And Dane Lin, who's VP at Business Roundtable, well-known, representative for businesses, we had him at the Senate briefing talking about this issue, and immediately heads turn, right? Like Business Roundtable is talking about this. So I do think our spokespeople, you know, need to include employers about why this issue is so big. And I think policy influencers listen more to employers, you know, that money talks thing, you know, in the United States, you know, we recognize that that is a real thing, and you see it play out in the data. So who is speaking on about this issue? I also just read an article recently about college professors saying students, you know, are coming in unable to read, you know, more than 5 to 10 pages, or they're spending a lot more time unpacking the readings that would be, you know, supplemental almost. That's also a higher ed issue, you know, related to literacy or comprehension. I think we've spent a lot of time thinking about reading fluency, but comprehension and critical thinking, you know, maybe have been a little bit by the wayside because of all these other issues, standardized testing and whatnot. So I do think higher ed, employers, like we need to get better about the argument that we're making. And I welcome all your ideas too. Joseph or others? I saw you just.
Joe, did you have something? One data point that I thought was really interesting, it's just one little piece here, but I don't think it's something I'd seen before, which is when you asked about the impact, this is for employers, the impact that low literacy had on their businesses or among their employees, and that a very significant percentage, I think it was 84%, said that that one of really the negative impacts is that some of their other employees had to work harder or more to compensate for their fellow employees who had lower literacy skills. And it's kind of an interesting piece because at least I often think of sort of that sort of being mostly affecting the person who really is challenged with, you know, with those skill issues, but it really has a larger impact on their coworkers as well, with respect to kind of making up for, you know, or maybe helping them in certain ways in the workplace that, you know, kind of makes them have to work longer and harder to kind of compensate for that. So I think there could be kind of an interesting little mini study as part of that. That's really an interesting observation.
Yeah, like that middle school or high school group project is never over, right? There's always someone doing more work and always someone kind of doing their piece. But that's what it made me think of, right? Like that same situation we've all been in where there's one person that can't really hold their weight. And I think in this case, you know, there may be some empathy there, but it definitely impacts, you know, the other workers.
Yeah. Right.
All right. I have time for maybe one more thought or comment or question.
Any other questions for Sarah?
All right.
So Sarah, Michelle from Manatee Literacy again.
Yeah.
Outside of LinkedIn, I just signed up for your newsletter on your website as well, but we would really like to take advantage of, like, kind of piggyback on all of the marketing efforts that you're investing in this area. So are there any other ways that we can help spread the word that you are spreading?
If you're interested, we have, you know, social media toolkits, you know, that our members of the coordinating council are using. But if you wanted to share, you know, some of those posts directly, I'd be happy to share out that toolkit, or, you know, have let you know like when the timeline is, when to look for the posts that you can reshare and things like that. but sure, I would love to have another conversation offline to see, who you're trying to communicate with and, what materials or support we could provide to you that would help build your case for your programs. I think for us, it's very important to be connected to local issues, and that's something we've been talking about a lot. Like, so much of the adult learning advocacy is federal and related to WIOA, which is a miss. There's a lot of funding at the state and local level that could be used. So just a couple of more slides about kind of what we're doing next. And this is a lot, but basically we can't do every part of the National Action Plan for Adult Literacy, and I'll also drop that resource in the chat. So in the next 3 years, we are focused on 3 kind of key strategies, which is increase awareness. So this counts, right? Me talking to you directly as part of our awareness building. And of course, investment. We're trying to raise funds around this issue. As I mentioned, it's very easy to fund programs. It's harder to fund this like infrastructure, connective tissue type work, where you don't see an immediate result. But that's what we're working to build is, yes, this is valuable. This is what we can do. We also want to engage adult learners as leaders and kind of shift from that scarcity mentality of all of us trying to compete, for funding, but switch toward a more abundance mindset. Like, this is for everybody to be involved, including people who are most directly impacted, which is adults that experience low literacy. And we are trying to mobilize funding and partnerships. I think Karen mentioned the libraries. The American Library Association is one of our key partners in this. And we've just gone after our first federal grant with 5 of the all-in organizations, with American Library Association being the lead. Fingers crossed we get the money, but that would be the first example of a collective project. That's a huge shift. People are not always willing to share their development resources, meaning like people. We had 20 grant writers at one point on that project. And that's people's time, and money basically to do that. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is shift the culture of how we work in adult learning. There's a lot of the same organizations and even people that have been in the adult literacy space for 10, 20, 30, 40, some 50 years. And so how can we build on their expertise and also expand the ecosystem to include more people? And finally, like some of our tactics, we had a summit that was a cross-sector summit. We had on the panel Hyundai Motors, Amazon. We're really trying to engage employers more effectively. We're doing a social media campaign, which starts today. And we're also trying to think about how can we monitor and evaluate our long-term work. And but for me, what's really still missing is adult learner perspectives. I know in New York City, I had the experience of being with the superintendent and 16 principals, 21 assistant principals, because I worked citywide, all 5 boroughs. And we were looking at the data and said only 4% of ELLs, English learners, are in our career and technical ed. And everybody's racking their brain, whiteboarding. And I'm like, has anybody asked the English learners what classes they would want to take? And they said, oh no, we haven't done that. Well, that's where you should start. Go around, talk to the students, tell them what's available, see what they would want to take. So that's what I did. And then after, a few weeks of going around to all the schools, our Spanish-speaking bilingual population had voted to have electrical installation, construction, carpentry, natural hairstyling, and medical billing as the 4 areas they wanted to learn in. So what we did was put the students in the career and technical ed classes first, and then bring in the English language support as a push-in and create more of a bilingual language that's contextualized. we moved from 4% to 17% in just 1 year, right? So I do find that asking learners for their perspectives is vital to the work, or else we're just all busy on Zoom. So we're now doing a new project, which is conducting a national adult literacy market research with adults who are eligible but not enrolled in programming. And our goal is not just the challenges of why they're not enrolling, but also what are their goals? What are their preferences? What are their aspirations when it comes to skills, including digital skills? So we hope that we can shift with these findings, and Greg is advising on that project. We hope we can shift from being more program-centered to learner-centered, right? Service delivery model. Like, how can we really do some self-reflecting? Like, what do students need, potential students? I loved Diane's idea of, we already know what could work, bringing a literacy educator into a business, right? How can we build on the models that we know work? And generate a set of learner-informed recommendations, you know, for how we design tools. Obviously, we're thinking about leveraging technology in this space, AI, mentoring, you know, what can we do in that space? And then, of course, we want to build on the existing ecosystem. We don't want to, you know, destroy and create new. We want to continue the expand and impact of our current system, but also think more, you know, globally, holistically. What else can we do? So that is the whole presentation, and I put all of our socials. I'm not really on X, but we do on All In have X. Any other general questions about All In or the research?
Have the policy folks in particular responded to this research at all? I'm not sure what kind of feedback have you gotten?
Respond is I mean, yes, in the fact that the co-chairs said, can you replicate this? Because they saw the co-chairs for Senator Susan Collins and Senator Reed of Rhode Island. Their staff attended the summit where they heard the research firsthand. It was a longer presentation with FTI, with a discussion and Q&A. And they said, can you do this again with the staffers? And so we did. But understanding how that connects to changes and how they operate, that's really challenging. Also understanding who you need to talk to, like who has the power to make a shift, is also something that we're working with. For example, National Coalition for Literacy and COABE, two of our members that probably are more prominent in being able to advocate and understand, you know, the landscape. But again, their strength is really at the federal level. Although COABE now has a state advocate fellowship, which is working on, you know, trying to move and shake at the state level. If you're interested in local change when it comes to policy, Ira Yankwitz in New York City with the New York Literacy Assistance Center, they have done some really exciting work, and they got city council funding to double the per pupil investment with major change, major gains. So I think I'm starting to shift more to like, how can we support local change? Because there's money, you know, in local places. And the other thing that happens is we look at Department of Labor data or Burning Glass data, and that's national, we need IT. And then you see everybody like scrambling to start IT programs. But I think if you look like in Charleston, South Carolina, IT is maybe not the biggest area, right, of opportunity. Manufacturing, they have Volvo, Boeing, right? So I think a more localized skill analysis is needed to think about those local advancement pathways, and not just everybody start an IT program.
Yeah. Well, congratulations for getting so many big employers around the table. That hasn't been done in a long time, I don't think.
Table is loose, like I mean, but we did have employers there, right? But I would, one of the things we're struggling with, like to be fully transparent, is like what does it look like to engage with All In as an employer? Like what's the benefits to participating in this for them? You know, what do they want? What do they need? And we've talked about, could we design employer toolkits or but there's a lot of toolkits out there. Is that the most effective way? So we're really trying to speak with employers and understand, why is this relevant to you and what could we do to help you? So I do think there's a positive shift in that maybe 10, 20 years ago, employers, the idea was that they didn't want to train people because they would gain skills and leave. I don't think that's the case anymore. In my experience, like employers are all struggling to find people that have the skills and to have retention. So I think we're in a great direction, but there's just so many players and so many competing issues. And now we're going in an election. So it's like this issue is out the window. It's the first issue to be out the window, I feel like. So how can we connect it to bigger issues like digital skills, which is a hot topic?
Right. In our last session, Veronica was talking about several workplace literacy programs they have, to your point, with regard to sort of the disincentives, and that hasn't been her experience. And in my experience over the years is when the economy is doing well, it often does create opportunities for workplace literacy or workplace ESL programs. She noted that employees are seeing this as sort of a benefit that they're offering their employees, and they're also they're finding themselves having to hire people with or limited English skills just because the economy is kind of requiring them to do that. So there's another incentive for their sort of operations to, help these folks develop their English skills. So the timing is good, I think, in many respects for kind of really giving a big push around sort of workplace oriented programming.
I agree. And to that comment about asking learners what they need, I've talked to a lot of employers in the last year who have said, well, we started an educational incentive program and we set up all these things, but the starting level was too high. So then we were, but they're wasting a lot of time, money, and energy in designing stuff in a vacuum instead of asking workers, like evaluating workers, figuring out the specific skills workers need. Right. So I think even that kind of approach, like supporting learning and development teams to just talk with workers. Would you participate in this? Why don't you log into your, free options for English learning, right? A lot of employers have offerings for learning, but people are just not taking advantage of it. But trying to understand why instead of doing another partnership with another huge, organization. Like I feel like those make a big PR splash. But if you really want people to do the learning and participate, you have to talk to the people about why they're not participating or.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we've had this conversation before. It doesn't look like, in so many industries kind of look to their customers and really, build their offerings around what the customers want. And we often don't really see our students as the customers in that way. So
yes.
Starting with them, that really should be the starting point.
Exactly. And I've learned so much from your, market research. I've used that, as a base for the research that we're doing now. So we love the Florida Literacy Coalition. Reach out to me anytime. I'll drop, my info in the chat. Ooh. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you. This has been excellent. Lots of great comments here. Everybody's enjoyed it. Really important work that you're doing. So thank you for sharing it. Very much appreciate it.
Oh, that helps me because some days I'm like, why did I take this on? So I appreciate that it's valuable to you.
Absolutely. Okay, very good. So with that, we're going to take a break and then reconvene back here at 12 o'clock. So see you all then. Take care. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. Hope everybody's rejoined us here. Our next session and the last session for today is a little bit of an update. We wanted to give you a little bit of an update on a few things we have going on here at FLC, and then open it up for discussion. So if you have something that you might be willing to share about a project or initiative, fundraiser, so forth that you're doing, we'd love to hear about that. There'll also be an opportunity to ask questions of your colleagues here. You know, if you're curious about how other folks handle a certain component of their program or part of the organization's administration and so forth, this would be a good time to do that. So we're going to have a little bit of an open discussion time. And then we'll adjourn for the day. So with regard to a few updates, we just wanted to share a few things that we have coming up here as we close out the month of June. We have a webinar tomorrow. I'm going to be doing this webinar on introduction to grant writing. This is a pretty fundamental session, but if you're new to grant writing, we'd love to have you join us. I mean, you're welcome to join us either way. I will be talking a little bit about using AI as part of the grant writing process, which is sort of a new component to at least my presentation, and I think new to a lot of us. And I'm not an expert on AI, but I have some thoughts and done a little research about how programs are increasingly using AI as part of their grant writing process. But it's a review of sort of the fundamentals. And then on the 26th next week, we have a webinar working with low-level ESOL students with little to no first language literacy skills. So Stephen Reed, who is from Virginia, is going to be doing that session. He really has some expertise in this area, and this is a group of folks that I know can be especially challenging to work with, and this is I think would be a good session if you have some students who sort of fit that category. And then we have our ESOL symposiums coming up next week. Standards and actions effectively incorporating adult curriculum standards and resources to guide ESOL instructions. So our own Veronica Pavone Baker is going to be facilitating both those sessions. They're half-day sessions, as you can see. One is going to be hosted at the Literacy Coalition of Palm Beach County on the 24th, 9:30 to 2, and then Michelle, who's on here at the Manatee Literacy Council, is going to be hosting at her facility there in Manatee on June 27th from 9:30 to 2. So we'd love to have you and your tutors and teachers come and join us. All these sessions are free. Excuse me. And there's the links here that we'll be sharing in the chat. Excuse me. I wanted to also share with you a little bit about some upcoming grant opportunities that we anticipate making available here in the next few months at FLC. We will be continuing to offer for a second year some program innovation grants. It's a little bit of a scaled down version of what we did last year, supported by Simply Healthcare. So those applications will be available in July. This is a special initiative to provide some seed funding for smaller sort of innovation grant or innovation programs or innovative programs. The grants will be up to $3,500. Then in September, we anticipate making available our financial literacy grants again. This is still pending approval from Wells Fargo, but they've supported this effort for many years and have asked us to reapply or invited us to reapply. So we're hoping that we'll be able to make those grants available to integrate financial education, financial literacy into adult education literacy ESL instruction. Those grants, again, will be up to $5,000. And then in October, we will be continuing through the generous support of Southwest Airlines to be able to offer some tickets on Southwest Airlines. This is our ticket contest. It's a very short application. None of these are very long applications, but this one in particular is very short. And programs that are interested in having tickets, usually for fundraising purposes, will be able to apply for that. So a few things we have coming up here. We're kind of wrapping up our fiscal year this month. We'll have some new announcements to make. We have not yet submitted or our state grant. Usually that comes a little bit later, but we do have some things that we're cooking up for next year that we'll share with you at a later date once everything's been finalized. Any questions on any of this? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing then. Okay, good. So what's on your mind? What would you like to talk about? Any questions or something that you might like to share? Does anybody have anything that they'd like to share in terms of a program or activity that they think others might be able to benefit from learning about? Or questions you might have? Something that you're struggling with perhaps, and you'd like to get some suggestions on how other folks handle similar situation or programming area?
I have a question.
Sure,
Brooke
go ahead.
Salmons. My first question is that financial literacy grant through Wells Fargo, the possibility of that, being approved and coming through, like you said, how would we find out or know if it did? Would we just go to the Wells Fargo website, or would it be?
That's an excellent question and something I should have covered. I apologize for that. All this will be available on our website. We do not have, we don't currently have the applications up, but we do have, if you go to our website and you go to our financial literacy section, and maybe I can pull it up here. We do have last year's application available. So here we go. This is our website. So for financial literacy, for example, just click on financial literacy here, go to Wells Fargo grant program. And this is our application information from last year that will, if you're interested in kind of getting a head start, that'll give you a good idea as to what we'll be including in this year's application as well.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you so much. And I did have another question, but I don't think it's the appropriate time, so I'll wait.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Earlier, I'm just pulling up what we had kind of went over earlier. The our third speaker, I apologize. I'm trying to pull her name right now.
Gina, for the panel?
The league, yeah. That's it.
Yeah,
That's Florida Adult Literacy League.
Yeah.
I love how there were so many locations available that it's hosted all over the place. The Treehouse Foundation, we serve 26 affordable housing Section 8 communities in the state of Florida. We also serve up to Michigan. We serve 63 communities all the way up through the states to Michigan. But Florida itself, we've had a real challenge being able to get folks to these locations themselves. I just didn't know if through the Literacy League or if any other program offered on-site programs that they could implement at a cost, at a fee for service.
I mean, having a program like, or an organization like the Adult Literacy League come in and offer classes within your facilities, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure a number of them might be interested. Where are you located in Florida?
So I'm in Orlando right now. We serve 6 communities in Orlando. We also have a cluster of communities we serve in Fort Lauderdale. That's a big one. We have a huge need in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. So between Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Orange County, like I said, and Osceola County, we have a bunch. But if we could just host it at a couple of these places, but those specific locations in the state, particularly, that would fill the need. That would start the process at least, so we could continue funding to pay for more of those types of services. Getting folks to the actual other places is difficult, but they will definitely come to the community center. And so we put some money aside to invest in that piece of it. But I haven't had a ton of luck finding a place or an organization that would come on site as even an option. So
Yeah, I think that's that was sort of at the heart of a lot of that discussion around partnerships, where it's sort of a win-win for the literacy organization as well as the community partner. So you have Gina's contact information, I guess, from her slide, right? And we can connect with you and maybe connect you to folks in Fort Lauderdale. We have anybody in Fort Lauderdale or Miami on here?
Oh, there it is. Hi, it's Vonda in Broward County.
Hi,
I'm in
Vonda.
Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And Brooke, we would need to kind of talk offline about how we can do that. I am not the only person in Broward, but the library is a large adult literacy and English and citizenship program. We have a very large one here in Broward, but I am the program manager for 37 branches, which are in the communities, I'm sure, where the 6 housing communities that you're referring to. And in the past, I have tried to work with those communities, but unfortunately, because I work mostly with volunteers who are teaching English and citizenship classes and the adult literacy classes, that I don't have staff that I can take out of a library and send to a housing location. But that's something that we can consider and look at, because I can help you to identify staff that you can recruit, and then we can train and supply materials and resources to go to those locations as their site. Um, as a part of the literacy staff in libraries, at each library, there's a literacy contact or coordinator, and some of those staff are only part-time and exclusively literacy. But I am having a hard time even filling positions in libraries, just like anybody else who's hiring. We're all struggling, and part-time positions are even more, even with benefits, are even more harder to fill. But I do have a lot of local partners who have, literacy teachers and things like that, that they can also kind of work with you, providing people who are already certified and trained to teach people to read and write and teach English, that they can kind of partner with you on finding funding and being able to bring people to the housing locations and run classes at those sites. Okay. So we'll
thank you, Ms.
talk. I
Vonda.
can put my information in the chat, my contact information in the chat. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And you can send it directly to her, Vonda, as well on the chat. You can kind of, you guys want to have a little
No,
side.
I'll leave it for everybody, just in case somebody else needs to share some information or reach out to me. Um,
Okay.
I,
Great.
I was going to chime in earlier because for 35 years, this is what I've been doing. 29 years in Broward County Library. I just did 29 years in March, but for 35 years, I've been in the education arena, previous school teacher, middle school teacher. But I just wanted to comment on that. I think a lot of the reasons why we don't um, get funding or support from, Congress and the different political environments, and even in libraries, is because of the population we serve and because of the term literacy. I think we have to change the vocabulary to say maybe adult learners, and put a face that really includes everybody. We tend to say that it's mostly, people of color, but a large portion of the people we serve are are all different ethnicities and income brackets who cannot read, are learning English, or need citizenship, or their children need help with homework. And I'm getting people in Broward, we're very diverse. I'm getting people from all over the world. I mean, there's 177 countries and 153 languages represented in Broward County Public Schools, and those people are coming for free English classes, homework help for their children. I work with a Russian student who's like 7 years old, and his mother comes, and I was able to help her to navigate English classes because she can't help him with the homework that's in English that she's struggling to learn as well. So it is a great need in Broward, and I think all over the nation is not very different. We just have to use some different terminology to get people to fund what we're doing, so that they don't think that, okay, that's not me. Those are not people who look like me. So that's not something I want to support, but I want to support all people who are they're all different people who are struggling with reading and the skills necessary to be successful in the United States.
Very good.
All right,
Very
I'm
good.
done.
Well, very
Get off.
good point. And, you know, there's been so much emphasis in recent years around adult education, you know, being a conduit for transitions to post-secondary and workforce. I mean, really, the workforce emphasis has been huge. And what Sarah shared, I thought was interesting data, because the employers are really, they really see that reading and writing, you know, some of those fundamentals, functional literacy skills as being a real need. So there's a bit of a disconnect there, I guess.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. And we have to, it is our responsibility and the students' responsibility, like she said, learner-centered, going back to the students to see how we can better present this to, you know, the policymakers and the powers that be. We have to do a better job, I think, of presenting what's really out there, and not focusing on the the jargon or the vocabulary that's familiar to us, but make it so it's, you know, familiar to them so that they can relate to it. And many of us have the same struggle. If you go to a fast food restaurant, you go into a grocery store, you can see even the staff who are handling your cash or, you know, putting in the produce, that they are struggling with literacy and language skills, because I can't go anywhere without realizing that somebody needs a program that is offered in libraries. That so everywhere I go, I'm talking about, we have English classes, we have literacy classes, we have an online high school. So I have to do that because everywhere I go, I see people struggling. They can't give back change from $20. When I'm purchasing $10 and something, if the computer does not tell them, they don't know how to make the change. I've seen young people pull out a calculator, to make change for $20. So it's challenging and it's everywhere. Everywhere it's needed.
Yeah, and libraries are such a great resource, and it was very disappointing to see in Sarah's research that libraries was down the bottom of the list when they asked at least policymakers, who's positioned well to address, the adult literacy issues. So we need to.
And that's partly because some libraries, because their librarians don't always see education as their responsibility. They kind of put it on the schools, but libraries have always been the university for, the free university,
Right.
I'm going to cut off my email so it don't be making noises, but it has always been a free university for everybody. Those who cannot afford to pay for our adult community schools require like a $10 or $15 entry fee, a $15 testing fee, and then every time you enroll in a course, you have to pay money. Everybody don't have that.
Right.
Money to do that. So they have to figure out what is free and what is available. And then so many of my adult learners in all of my programs are dealing with, the cost of living in South Florida, the housing issue with, being homeless. I have some students who are working out of their car with their laptop pulled up to the library so that they can do their homework. It's a struggle to help.
Right.
When people's their basic needs are not being met, but they need this education in order to get a better job so that they can, survive and live.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
Absolutely.
I want to jump in for a second talking about libraries and literacy. I think for so long, libraries have been known for early childhood literacy. And that just has taken up so much space in everyone's mind that they forget that the libraries also offer the adult literacy aspect of it. But yeah, everything Vonda said, all of that. And I think it just goes to show that libraries we need to start doing more outreach and just more letting people know that we are there and we're available and just exactly all the services that we do offer to the adult community, which Carolina County, we've this summer really started pushing that. And I've talked to our library director, and we're even going to move our literacy office so it's more visible to the public, to people who come in. So instead of being up with administration, I'm going to be more down and where people are coming in to use the computers and things like that. So I think it's just going to take time and some thought.
Yeah, right. But it sounds like you got a plan to raise the visibility, which is great.
Yeah, that's it. And I
Other-
think our vocabulary, we can, you know,
Yes.
Create new vocabulary that does not just associate it with just a specific population, because literacy is across the line. So many people
Yeah.
need it.
Well, yeah, going back, Greg, a couple of years ago or 3 years ago, something, I don't know. Time is, I can't keep track of time anymore. Blaming the pandemic, but you did the webinar about the attracting learners to the program and things like that, and you specifically, yeah. And one of the things that you had found out was that the name is very important, and that literacy was not so popular, but more of the adult education or that kind of thing was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were a few things that came out of that, and I can post the links here that we had some focus groups and both for adult basic education and literacy students, as well as an ESL one, just to try to get an idea of what resonated with them in terms of messaging, what were some of their motivations and so forth. And you're right, the terminology, literacy, basically had a, fairly positive kind of, associations with it. But it wasn't always the best fit. So, people, if you're called the Literacy Council, people might not think that's where you go to get English language instruction, so there's a disconnect there, which was a difficult thing. And then also the term ABE, or adult basic education, had a pretty negative connotation. That was one of the real takeaways there, that folks were like, basic, why do I want basic? They kind of saw basic as sort of a quality factor there. So maybe we're doing ourselves a bit of a disservice when we're using terms like adult basic education. It's not really resonating with people who are trying to reach. So that goes to that terminology thing you were talking about, Vonda.
Yes, definitely.
I do have one question about grants. In the past, or just recently, FLC has started offering family literacy grants to get programs going. Do you know, are you planning to do that in the future, or?
We are hoping to. I didn't list that one on the grants because we just did that. So that would be like about another year away, essentially. Supported through the Kislak Family Foundation. We had a really good response this year to the grant. And so we have reached out to the Kislak Family Foundation, and or actually they invited us to submit another proposal, which we've done. So we're waiting to hear on that to see if that's going to be something we'll be able to offer another round. We were funded to do 2 rounds of that. Those are grants. I think we gave away 8 grants of up to $10,000 each. So we're hoping that will continue to be funded, because it really does. I mean, it seems like, at least in a small way, trying to, provide another opportunity for folks who are interested in adding a family literacy component or building upon what they're doing in family literacy. Because at one point, family literacy was rocking and rolling here in Florida, back when, I don't know, Vonda, you were around, but I'm not sure how many folks were here when Jeb Bush was, doing a lot of promotion around family literacy, Barbara Bush Foundation and whatnot. So there were a number of different grant opportunities that were made available. But that certainly hasn't been the case for, well over a decade now. So, but it's a really important area of programming to kind of really address that intergenerational cycle. And so we're really hoping that we'll be able to continue it next year. So we'll keep you posted on that. But yeah, we in our health literacy grants too, I didn't include that in there because that's going to be more than a few months out. But we're hoping to be able to make that available again this year as well. Other questions, other observations? Anything else folks want to share?
I'll jump in from the FLC side. I know we were talking about tutor and volunteer recruitment, tutor training. We are just wrapping up a session of our online course for basic literacy and ESOL tutor training. I'm going to drop a link in the chat for our online waiting list. If you have anybody that you'd like to recommend, or to take the class, we are working on creating a platform for individual programs to host their own online training, so that way they don't have to wait for us necessarily to host online, and that way they can, you know, work their own through our system. So that's to come, and if you'd like more information on that, please reach out. I'm excited to bring that to you guys and also collaborate further there to make sure that we're giving the tutors all the access and things that they need to continue on and hopefully maintain that retention as well.
Yeah. I know a few of you were doing that in the past, and we redone the course, and with our staffing issues here and so forth, that kind of got put on the back burner. But that's going to be a priority for the summer for anybody who's interested in having their own course. I mean, essentially it's the same course. You can just brand it, and you know, we'll get you up and running on that so you can offer it as frequently as you'd like. And then we plan, you know, assuming we get our grant from the state again, to offer 3 or 4 different facilitated courses over the course of the year that you can plug your people into as well. And we had a good response to this round that we have here. So we're going to be focusing more on that, since it seems like people are doing more. Are you all doing a little bit more in terms of sort of virtual instruction around tutor training these days?
Absolutely. And thank you very much for all the opportunities you afford on that. Everybody got used to doing it online, so it's worked out well for us.
That's good. And you know, this course is, as you know, Joe, is not meant to be an end all and be all. You still have to, you know, bring in your components around it. So in terms of what you're doing locally and your matching process and how you do evaluations and curriculum and so forth, how do you tend to do that, Joe? Do you have an in-person, is it a blended where you do partially in person, partially online? Or?
It's blended in terms of training. It's definitely blended. Yeah. Most of our classes and most of our tutorial sessions are still in person, just because we've been fortunate. But I think a big component for at least what we do is the training involves, when we get a new tutor or new volunteer, having them attend classes with existing group and or individual tutors. That really helps a tremendous amount.
So they're kind of observing and learning.
Correct.
As they go along, yeah, sort of a.
Because we get, you know, we're fortunate, and a lot of the agencies are. We don't just get retired teachers or former teachers. I mean, we obviously appreciate that, but we have doctors and lawyers and engineers and everybody else. I mean, it's really nice to have people from different walks of life.
Now, let me ask you a question, Joe, because you partnered with the Literacy Alliance in Northeast Florida, and we're one of only just a couple of organizations to get a state grant this year,
right?
Or even to apply for a state grant. And I know that's not a great fit for everybody, but has that been can you share with us a little bit about how that's going? I know it's still relatively new, but you're coming up on, I guess, the end of your first year. Is that right?
Yeah, well, for Marcus, it might be his full first years. For us, it's like a first semester, let's say 6 months. Okay. Because the testing will change after June 30th. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt his presentation this morning, but I did want to say that going back to that, for those who are in there, that's one of the big things to me, is just being able to accept help from people who have more knowledge and more experience, because it really makes a tremendous difference. And his Literacy Alliance, and Marcus in particular, they've really helped us a lot, because what basically he did is he included us in his grant to the DOE to include our ESL, our GED, and our basic literacy people. And we just had, I think, 15 or 16 people test in May. And then hopefully continue to do that, and the numbers will grow. So it's worked out very well, actually.
So,
And if he's on here, I'm looking for his name. I know there's a couple people.
I think he had to, yeah, I think he had
Right. But they've done a great job, and they're willing to share. And for anybody else who might have not known about Marcus and the other people that spoke this morning, I find all of you guys to be tremendously helpful, and it really is a sense of camaraderie. So it's very much appreciated.
Yeah. Thank you.
But yes, in answer to your initial question, the grant process has gone well, and thankfully he applied for it, because there is definitely money for that.
And may I ask what once you're kind of fully up and running, what your annual allocation will be for?
You mean in terms of numbers of students,
yeah,
or
for your, how much will your program be getting for the grant, grant funds?
Well, yeah, he's obviously going to get the lion's share, because his
Yeah.
organization is in charge of it. They did all the grunt work. But basically it comes out to, I think, about like $800 per student. So it's really, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? What else is on your mind?
Well, I don't want to step on toes, but I think you got a great staff with you right now. They've all worked out very well. So I know they're relatively new, but
Yeah.
they've made it a lot easier for me and for my people.
Oh, good. Well, glad
So
to hear
thank
that.
you.
Thank you for that feedback. Does anybody else have any questions for your colleagues here, or anything else you'd like to share?
I just have one quick question, maybe again, it has to do with data again, but
Sure.
so we're seriously considering going with LACES, which I tried it several years ago, and then switched, and now we're looking to go back to LACES. Had a demo yesterday, and it looks like they've made several improvements. It looks like it would be pretty good. Are any of you using LACES currently? And do you like it or do you hate it?
LACES. Who's using LACES, and what's your thoughts? Anybody? Nobody's using LACES on this? That's unusual.
No.
So what are you using? And that's going to be my question. My next question.
This is for data, and we are going to have a small group discussion around this tomorrow too, because this is a question of interest to folks. But what are this for? Your student data management. Are people using a particular database or spreadsheets, or what are folks using?
We definitely are doing that, but I would have to go take a break and check with my person who knows the names of all of it. But
yeah,
we're happy with the database we do have. So
We use at the Treehouse Foundation, we use Monday, and they offer free software to 501 nonprofits.
Now that's for tracking student progress.
It's for well, you can customize it for that.
Oh, really?
It's a process. Don't get me wrong. A long process, but once you get it, it does work pretty efficiently. Okay. You can use the CRM model in it.
Okay, interesting. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one? So can you go ahead and put the evaluation in a link? Here we go. Okay. So we'd love to hear your feedback on today's sessions. And we will, all the PowerPoint presentations that were shared today, we'll make those available as well. Anything else before we wrap up? So you can You can use a QR code there. That's more convenient for you in terms of your, and it's just a short survey. We really love to have your feedback. So we will be reconvening tomorrow at 9 o'clock and go into about 12:20. I think we have some really good sessions tomorrow. The first out of the chute will be using analytics, like Google Analytics and other programs to improve your program outreach. So we have an expert on that. And I think she'll have a lot of good information to share that can really help you to make informed decisions around your recruitment and outreach efforts, especially those that are involving social media and other online tools. So look forward to that. And there's nothing else. We'll go ahead and adjourn for the day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye now. See you tomorrow.